so Stannard asked her what was wrong with her. She sighed and explained that although they won, they lost 10 soldiers. Darvis approached her, bumped into her shoulder, and was impressed as their ever-so-compassionate princess exuded such kindness and grace to them who were just peasants, which irritated her, so she wanted him to zip it. Karia grabbed her hand and tried to calm her. She assured her they had done their best and won. Stannard stands and agrees with her, as they all know what is at risk every time they go into battle, and it's impossible to save every soldier. Tess looked at him and smiled as she agreed to what he said, because they couldn't rescue them all. Darvis, hearing all of their conversations, whispered that this was a nice try, which confused Stannard, and he tried to satisfy Stannard that it wasn't what he meant. The healer behind asked the soldiers if anyone needed healing, and one of the mages holding his hip uttered that his hips needed healing as it hurt. On the other side, Tess sighed as she was confident that with her current rate, she wouldn't be able to catch up to him. Cario popped in front of her and asked if she was referring to a guy named Arthur about whom she always talked. The conversation about Arthur annoyed Darvis, as he didn't want to hear about the Arthur again. He was irritated as she described him as some all-powerful, inhumanly charismatic hotshot without a single flaw. So there was no way she was not being biased. Cario was having fun, so she remarked that Darvis was jealous because Arthur was everything he wished he could be. Tess added salt to his wound by saying that Arthur was famous in school, although she doubted he realized it. Caria was certain that he would be better looking than Darvis, which infuriated him, and he wanted her to take her words back and call her a condensed ogre. Tess commented that Arthur was a little scary when she first met him. Caria was pushing back Darvis as he was attacking her, and she was startled as she recalled that Tess told them that Arthur saved her from slave traders after she ran away from home. Tess affirmed and uttered that thought. She felt like it wasn't out of his heart, but some logical scheme. Caria was impressed to know about it as she likes bad boys, but Darvis was jealous and thought he would barf as he doesn't seem like a great guy. Darvis uttered that after being kidnapped during the Xyrus Academy 9 invasion, Arthur didn't make sure she was okay and just went to a place that no one knew. Tesha explained that he checked in with her grandpa to ensure she was fine but was in a hurry. Darvis made a strange face and taunted him, saying that he had gone to train somewhere in secret, and Stannard hit him on his chest to stop him. Darvis didn't stop and said that if she asked him, he would say he ran away from the war because he was afraid to die. This frustrated Caria as he went a bit too far and was quite harsh. Tess refused as he was wrong because she knew that Arthur might be a bit clueless and naive in some areas, but he was not one to run away in fear. She knew that Arthur's desire to protect his loved ones was too strong for that to happen. He turned and said yes and mumbled that she would tell Arthur that he would be the hero who saved them all from the wrath of the Elacrian and war. After he leaves, Caria is furious at how harsh he is and calls him a jerk. Stannard thinks the Arthur wouldn't be that strong to save them, but Tess remarks that he is strong enough. Caria can't wait to meet the Arthur and requests Tess to introduce them to him, and she affirms and hopes they will meet soon. Later, they all progress and go deep into the den, but Darvis is concerned about how spooky that place is. Drogo gave them the sign to stop. He turned and whispered that they would soon reach the point where Mana Beast ambushed their scout, Sayer, and his team. Based on Sayer's report, they should expect at least a few hundred gnolls and orcs, which are larger and more dangerous than the ones they have faced up until now. Drogo wants his team to be prepared and wishes the one who watches over them to be with all the soldiers. They rushed inside, but were shocked to see the surrounding situation and wondered what had happened there. All the beasts were already dead, which alarmed them. Darvis wasn't sure if he should be relieved or scared. Drogo was also concerned. Still, he instructed the soldier to get to the gate, and they rushed to the main entrance. Tesha instructed her team to stay in formation, and they affirmed, but she was shocked to see the door. The soldier who went near the gate worriedly uttered that the door wasn't fully closed, and suddenly, they heard the sound of something huge falling down. Drogo instructed them to open the door, and they started opening it. Tess's teammates were fully prepared to attack immediately if there was any dangerous encounter. After they opened the door, they were shocked to see the piled-up S-rank monsters and blood dripping out of the room. They were all dumbfounded to see this, and Tess lowered her sword. She went inside and was shocked to see Arthur sitting on the pile of monsters. Tesha inquired if the person sitting there was Arthur, And then the soldiers heard Sylvie's voice, which started them. Sylvie jumped on Tess affectionately as she missed her. This concerned Drogo, and he inquired Princess if she was all right. Tess forbade him from attack as she was friendly. Drogo pointed his sword toward Arthur, inquired who he was, and asked for his name. The Arthur jumped down, approached them, and assured them he was an ally. Helen was pleased as she saw Arthur, who had returned after a long time, and she rushed toward him and hugged him. Stannard was stunned to see the person Tess mentioned so much, but wondered what was wrong with Tess and if she was not happy to see him. Tess stood alone at the corner, reluctant to meet him, while all the Twin Horn members rushed to meet him. Drogo uttered that he hated interrupting their reunion as there were more pressing matters at hand. He wanted to know what happened there as he wasn't informed that anyone would join them in this operation. The Arthur was certain that no one was informed since he arrived less than an hour ago, so he hadn't expected to land amid a massive swarm of mana beasts. Drogo was frustrated and asked if he meant he single-handedly killed all of that mana beast behind him, including the S-class mutant. The Arthur asks him if he could see anyone else there. Drogo doesn't believe a mere boy could kill them. Drogo uttered that they had a whole battalion of mages preparing for weeks and wondered who that kid was and how he could possibly kill them alone. His aura was also strong. Stannard was shocked and wondered what had happened to all the beast cores as he couldn't see them. The Arthur explained that his bond has quite an enormous appetite for the beast core. Drogo was shocked to know that the little thing ate all the beast cores. Sylvie was busy in her world, but she started when she heard the monster's voice attacking Arthur. Tess was worried about him, but the Arthur immediately attacked and killed him, shocking them all. The Arthur apologized to them as he must have missed one and requested that if he wanted to ask a few more questions, then he should let him wash up and have something to eat first. Tess assured Drogo that she and the Twin Horn would vouch for him and would make sure that he gets escorted back to base without trouble. Helen also vouched for Arthur as he was their old friend. Arthur approached her and thanked her for her help, and she smiled. There was no doubt that this was Tess's childhood friend, but unease was still in her chest. But it had been years since she had last seen him, and she had imagined their reunion would be different. She could tell everyone was restless from his sudden appearance. Arthur clearly kept secrets, and he only seemed to be debriefing what was necessary. It left Drogo unsatisfied, but gave him enough to plan the next course of action for their raid. After the meeting ended, Jasmine tried to get some rest and left Arthur and Tesha behind. Tess was a bit shy about initiating conversation, but the Arthur looked at her, smiled, and uttered that it had been a while since they met and that he missed her. Tess's eyes were filled with tears, and she hugged him and said she missed him too. The Arthur chuckled at seeing Tess crying. He wiped her tears as if she were still a crybaby. She gets furious and tells him to shut up as she wants to say to him that a lot has changed since he wasn't there. The Arthur figured out and asked her how she had been during all this time, as she wanted to know everything. Meanwhile, Darvis was shocked outside the camp as this was anticlimactic, but Karya arrived and remarked that it was pretty eventful. Even with all of them combined, she doubted they would have come out unscathed from a fight like that. That concerns Darvis, as Arthas was just one person, so it's not possible that he would be fine. He wondered if he killed those monsters and how he could kill them all. Karya was amazed as she could smell a hint of jealousy, and Stannard wondered if she meant envy. Stannard uttered that jealousy is what the person feels when he worries someone will take something they possess, and envy is longing after something that someone else has. Darvis grabbed his axe and got what he should do, and he decided to challenge the Arthur to a duel. Karya and Stannard got worried and requested him not to do that. Karya wondered why he was letting this get to him so much as Arthur was just one person. She was confident that no matter how strong he was, it was not like he could win the war himself. Darvis puts his weapon back, clarifies that he doesn't need her pity, and is confident that Arthur isn't natural if he single-handedly wipes out an entire army of Mana Bast and an S-class mutant. He remarked that the guy was a snobby jerk who didn't even know how to talk to others, as his way of conversing with them was a bit strange. Stannard thought that everyone was kind of a jerk to him, which annoyed Darvis as he was taking that stranger's side. Stannard clarified that there are no sides as it is naive to form an impression of the guy without even conversing with him. They have always heard Tesha talk about him, so he thinks they should give him the benefit of the doubt. Darvis disagreed, as Tesha's mind was clouded by her childhood memories, and he clearly saw the tension and distance between them. He wickedly smiled and thought Stannard would finally have a chance with her. This pissed off Stannard, and he furiously asked him if he was that petty, as he sounded like a child who was bringing him his envy. Darvis furiously replied that he was basing it on his instinct. Seeing the seriousness of the situation, Carrier requested them not to fight. Both of them were out of control and weren't listening to Carrier, and Darvis was taunted that it might be something Stannard couldn't do because of his deformed mana core. Stannard uttered that at least he doesn't overcompensate when he sees someone better than him to keep his worthless pride intact. Darvis furiously grabbed Stannard's collar, grinned, and then pushed him back, as he was right because he was becoming like his old man. They were startled and turned as they heard Tessa's voice informing them they were done with the meeting. She came out with Arthur and waved at them. Darvis smiled and uttered that what he was doing was different from that. He approached them, which startled Tesha and Darvis Clairol, as the fourth son of Clairol's house formally challenged Arthur to a duel. Everyone was cheering Darvis and wanted him to show them what the Clairol axes could do. At the same time, Twin Horn, Tesha, and her team were worried about Darvis. They are facing each other, and the Arthur wants to know the particular reason why he wants to have this duel. Even though he accepts the duel, Darvis furiously utters that it's the man's pride. Soon, Drogo instructed them to prepare and refresh the rules before they could begin. He taught them to keep mana usage strictly to body augmentations, first to yield or otherwise they would become incapacitated, and they agreed. Drogo is confident as Darvis is a competent soldier, so he definitely wants him to put up a fight, and he wants to see if Arthur is as strong as he said. Soon, the duel begins, and Darvis rushes behind the Arthur, but is shocked when Arthur notices him. Darvis rushed back, so his companion remarked that he should stop being a wimp and attack. This frustrated him, and he told them to shut up. Darvis's aggressive behavior stunned Carrier and Stannard was shocked as he had been with him for a long time. Darvis was always mercilessly hacked away at a class mana beasts with cruel efficiency. He has seen Darvis beat down adventurers in his own class, but twice he does so with a content smile on his face. Now, what he witnessed was quite unbelievable, as even from there, Stannard could make out the very thing he thought the battle-hungry Darvis lacked, which was fear. Darvis shouted and rushed to attack the Arthur, but he easily evaded all of his attacks. After several unsuccessful attempts to attack him, the Arthur hits his chest and is pushed back. Darvis was stunned as Arthur's reaction speed was insane, yet he didn't give him and rushed to give him another strike. With a single strike of his hand, the Arthur quickly broke the rocks that were thrown at him. Exploiting the situation, Darvis rushed behind him, but what really shocked him was his presence, which was noticed, and Arthur dodged his attack. With his insane speed, Arthur gives him several punches on his weak points without a break and leaves. His attacks left Darvis trembling. He lost grip on his axe and fell, unable to get hold of his body. This shocked everyone, as they could not comprehend the situation. However, Carrier was surprised when she figured out how to rupture the mana flow. Stannard was speechless when she heard it and asked if she meant when the clusters of mana channels get blocked. He read about it in Mana Flow Anatomy, but those points were supposedly naturally protected when the augmenter strengthened his body. These points are supposed to be so small that it's almost impossible to target them in battle precisely that fast. The Arthur wanted to help Darvis out, so he asked him, but he was so pissed off that he didn't want his help even in that state and instructed him to get away from him. Stannard was amazed to think that they had just witnessed something amazing. Darvis shouted in fear as he couldn't get a grip on his situation and wondered why he could not move his body. Commander Varian appeared there, assured Darvis he would be fine, and asked Arthur if he was right. His sudden arrival shocked everyone. Tess wondered when her grandfather got there, and Arthur looked at him and smiled. Soon, they were inside the camp, and Varian was choking the Arthur and pulling his ear as he returned without even informing him. The Arthur is glad to see Varian again, and is shocked to see Aldir with him. Elder Aldir remarked that both the Arthur and Lady Sylvie have changed. The Arthur wondered how they learned that he had arrived so quickly, and Varian uttered that Lord Aldir had received a message from Lord Winsome, so they came immediately. Aldir never thought he would be sent back to where Tesha was stationed and inquired if this was Ren's doing. This question concerns Tesha, so she immediately pops out. and the Arthur utters that Ren's droll sense of humor will not be missed. Tess hits the Arthur and remarks that it is pretty surprising to see Arthur, rather than the S-class mutant they are hunting. The Arthur explained that as soon as he arrived there, a horde of mana beasts attacked him and Sylvie, so they didn't even have time to catch their breath, and Sylvie nodded her head as a sign of affirmation. Tess was surprised to know that Arthur was telling Drogo the truth back there, that it really was him who defeated those beasts. She had so many questions to ask him and rambled about what about the door and how he managed to get in. Her grandfather stopped her, as this was not the right time to ask questions because there was nothing they must urgently discuss with Arthur, and this wasn't the right place to discuss them. Tess was surprised to know they were leaving, but Lord Aldir told her she was not going and had to stay there. Tesha was annoyed as Arthur had arrived a few hours ago, and they were already taking him away. The Arthur stops her because he has much to debrief them on, so he must leave with them. Commander Varian reminded her that with this dungeon cleared, everyone would soon head out, and she had her battles to be responsible for. So she and her team will be busy, so she should prepare them and remind them what they agreed upon. Tesha sadly nodded her head, then saluted the commander and rambled what he told her to work her way up from battles using her own strength, and he affirmed. Lord Aldir decided to leave immediately and commented that Tesha had gotten stronger these past few months and was amazed as the battles she went through were indeed molding her well. Tess thanked her master, which startled Arthur, as he had never expected Lord Aldir to take her under his wing. Soon, they came out of their camp, and Stannard was startled to see Arthur, who nodded his head after seeing him, and involuntarily, he saluted the Arthur. This annoyed Darvis further, and he inquired why he saluted him, and he replied that it felt like the proper thing to do. After some time, they reached the portal, and the Arthur asked Sylvie why she didn't talk to Tess back there. But her answer amazed the Arthur as she replied that a lady needs to keep a few secrets. She wanted to surprise Tesha with it next time, and they entered the portal, but were shocked as they saw the giant bear on the other side. Abruptly, Ellie popped up from the bear and was delighted to see her brother return. She jumped at the Arthur, which terrified him and Sylvie. She hugged her brother and welcomed him. The Arthur thanked her for such a warm welcome. He grabbed her as she was too old to jump on people like that, and she was startled when their parents arrived. She waved at her parents, but the Arthur was a bit reluctant to greet them on remembering what happened in the past. Unexpectedly, his parents hugged him, which he couldn't understand as he thought his parents wouldn't like his return. The Arthur's mother remarked that the person she had raised for over a decade had returned after years of training, so she thought he deserved a hug. The Arthur's father patted his head and was certain they would have given him enough hell like training. Besides, they have invested in him too much, so they can't give up on him. Arthur agrees as they both have given him more than he deserves. Ellie grabbed his arm, wanted to show him her bound, and asked if he wasn't going to ask her about Boo. The Arthur was amazed to know that the giant dog was named Boo. This infuriated Boo as he was making fun of his name. Boo forcefully slammed his hand on the Arthur's shoulder, which broke the floor, but he didn't move from his place. Ellie and Boo both were shocked as they weren't expecting this. Arthur moved away Boo's hand and was amazed as he has quite a temper. Ellie went to him and clarified to the Arthur that her bond was just wanted to see if he was as strong as she told him he was. She assured him that his bond was very competitive, but Boo was disheartened after failing in an attempt to terrify Arthur. The Arthur was surprised to know that his sister could talk to the beast and inquired if she was bonded to it, and she proudly affirmed. Their mother was astounded to know who their daughter was taking after. After hearing this, their father felt proud of his daughter. The Arthur asks Varian when this happened, and Varian is amazed to know that Lord Winsome didn't mention this to him. Lord Winsome gave this mana beast to the Arthur's family as a gift before he departed to Iphodus. The Arthur was shocked that Winsome handed this giant stuffed animal to his sister, so she could ride on it into a battle. He looked at Boo, who was annoyed to hear this, and affirmed to him that he called him a teddy bear. Reynolds uttered that he was just a baby when Lord Winsome gave him to them, though, but he has to say that Boo has grown quickly over the past 2 years. Lord Aldir was moved to have witnessed this warm family reunion, but the rest will need to wait until after their discussion. The Arthur is reluctant to leave his family and looks at his parents, who nod their heads, permitting him to leave. Lord Aldir specially prepared this place for his family to live for the time being, as he knew it would be of Arthur's interest, and assured him he would see them again. The Arthur thanks him for his consideration, and he pats at his sister's head, promises to talk to her soon, and leaves. He looked back toward his family and saw Boo patting Ellie's head as he wanted to train more to protect Ellie, and she was aware of it. The Arthur smiled on seeing this and waved at his family. Sylvie was glad as his sister wouldn't be alone again. Later, they were in the meeting room, and Arthur was amazed as there were no kings, queens, or lances for the meeting. He assumed he would at least be seeing the Director Goodsky there, which left them dumbfounded. Virion glanced at Lord Aldir after he permitted him. He uttered that there was still a lot on the war status that Arthur had not been caught up to. He explained that Cynthia is currently in a state of self-induced slumber, and she is trying to cope with the effects of the curse that activated when she disclosed intel on the Alacrian. The Arthur gets furious after hearing this and asks them to explain everything from the start. He spent hours bombarding the two leaders with all the questions he had, as he had been out of the loop for almost 2 years. Winsome and Ren only told him the information they thought was necessary, which wasn't much. According to Virion, the Gladers had been focusing most of their efforts on the Kingdom Darth, hoping to regain allegiance to the dwarves. Curtis and Kathleen Gladers did what Tess had done. They formed a team to get some real battle experiences on the front lines. His family was at the castle for protection, but the Helstia family had gone elsewhere, and Vincent was using his resources to assist with the war efforts. The Arthur asked the leaders if his parents had also expressed interest in joining the war. Virion uttered that his father had shown interest, but he told him to restrain himself until either the Arthur returned or Eleanor was a bit older. Arthur thanked him as he couldn't imagine how he would have felt if his father had gone and died in the war while he wasn't there. Since he gets the briefing on everything, he wants to get to the point of this meeting. He knows they didn't bring him there just so he could reunite with his family, and he knows that it's something serious enough to keep their own granddaughter in the dark, or he would have told him at the camp. Virion uttered that Tesha was ambitious and had trained diligently, but he was worried. The Arthur understands that Virion worries more about her safety than anything else. He wants them to correct him if he is wrong because it seems like the current battle is a concern for anyone on the front lines. Even though the defensive line at the wall is preventing the mutants and Alacrian soldiers from leaving the Beast Glades. The hidden teleportation gates set up by Alacrian spies and their control of the Mana Beast add up to pretty dangerous battle forces. He was suspicious. The Beast Glades may be the perfect place for them to establish, given the S-Class or SS-Class Mana Bast under their controls, but it's too straightforward. The Arthur knew that if none of them were able to get through their defense, it either meant that their side was that much stronger or they were stalling for time. Commander Virion is sitting quietly, so judging from his facial expression, the Arthur realizes that the latter might be correct. Virion explained that they recently found the evidence, which has confirmed that it is very suspicious. Lord Aldir was going to show him a scroll and didn't want Arthur to blame himself for what he was about to tell him. He spreads out the scroll, which shocks the Arthur as he recognizes the design. Lord Aldir clarified that it's to the Daikthyus if that's what he was wondering, because this is the ship by the Alacrians using Arthur's design. The Arthur grabbed the design and furiously clenched his fist to scramble the blueprint. Virion instructed him something when a soldier suddenly came inside the room and called him. The commander wondered what this mattered, and the soldier worriedly informed them that they had been sighted approaching the western coast. The soldier was trembling in fear, and he informed them that the Alacrian ship was approaching them, which shocked the Arthur. The Arthur gets concerned and immediately rushes out, bumping into a soldier on his way. 2 soldiers were guarding the gate and were startled to see him. The soldier requested that he tell them his name and business. The Arthur didn't reply and rushed toward the gate, but the soldier grabbed him, tried to stop him, and pushed him back. The Arthur requested them to open the doors, but they refused and informed him that all entries and exits are to be authorized by either Commander Virion or Lord Aldir. They haven't heard anything from either of them, so they can't let the kid enter. The Arthur uttered that he had just returned to this castle with Virion and Aldir, and they knew he was heading out, so he insisted they let him through. The soldier gets furious and instructs him to call them Commander Virion and Lord Aldir. No matter how lofty those noble kids think they are, the soldiers still think kids need to learn some respect for their elders. He stopped Arthur and tried to convince him that it was dangerous for him to go out alone in these times, and if he had a guardian, he would let him in. The Arthur sighed, and his killing aura made it difficult for the soldier to take a breath, and it felt like someone was choking them. The Arthur furiously warned them that it would be wise of them not to patronize him specifically now. Suddenly, Lord Aldir appeared, and he put his hand on Arthur's shoulder and instructed the soldier that Arthur was free to leave if he wished. Lord Aldir instructed him not to do anything foolish because it would be a shame to have wasted Winsome's time. The Arthur nodded and assured Aldir, then rushed inside and instructed the man to set the gate to Ediston. Meanwhile, two dark men stood on both sides of her bed in Elder Cynthia's room. They uttered that it was imperative that she give them as much information as possible. They knew that her knowledge could win them this war and wanted her to think of the millions of lives she could help save by cooperating. They smiled wickedly while reaching out to her as he thought it would be all right if she died from the after effects of the curse because as long as they got the answer they needed, her job was done. This concerned Cynthia as she never thought she would die like this and supposed that Lord Aldir had lifted the curse. Soon, her vision blurred, and she started remembering her past when Varian asked her what she planned on doing now that the war was over. Varian had known her for quite some time, and for some of those years, they were enemies. For some, they weren't, but he always kept thinking one thing to himself. Cynthia smiled and wondered what it was that he kept thinking. She asked if that was his undying love for her. Varian apologized to her because that was not the case and asked her if she had forgotten that he was married. Cynthia thought for a while and remarked that marriage hadn't stopped any human nobles yet, but Varian reminded her that he was elf, loyal to their mate. Instead, he kept thinking about what a great mentor and inspiration she would make. He could visualize her as the head of some prestigious academy leading the up-and-coming youth toward a more fantastic future. Cynthia was surprised as that came out of nowhere and wondered what brought him to that conclusion. There were a lot of things that made him think about it, but he seriously wanted her to think about becoming a teacher and was confident that she would grow to love it. Cynthia thought then she might open up an academy of her own as she had taken a liking to Xyrus City. Varian liked her idea of an academy for mages atop a floating city. Seeing him all excited, Sentai asked for his opinion and asked if they should open the school together. Varian looked at her, started laughing, and asked if they should call it Goodski and Iralith School of Mages. He refused her offer and thought he might instead send his future grandkids or even great-grandkids when they came of age, but it would happen if her school were good enough for them. Cynthia confidently visualizes the school and assures him that she will do it, so she wants him to wait and see. Her Xyrus Academy will become the most significant institution for mages the world has ever seen. Varian thought having an Xyrus Academy in Xyrus City was not original, but Cynthia said she couldn't call it the Goodski and Iralith School of Mages. She proudly told him he would be lucky if she let his descendants attend her academy. Varian clarified that he was kidding. Varian turned and looked at her as if he was hoping for the success of Xyrus Academy, and she hoped for a better future, too. She saw him leaving and suddenly, she felt excruciating pain and tried to call him back, but he didn't listen to her. On his way, he turned once and uttered that he was an old man, so he wanted to leave first, but Cynthia was shocked. She was coughing out blood, and she shouted. Her shouting voice jolted Varian, and he came out of his room and asked the soldier what was happening. The soldier stopped and was unsure about the situation, but he knew the scream seemed to come from one floor below. Varian thought there shouldn't be anyone, but he was shocked as he remembered about Cynthia. On the other hand, the Arthur reached Ediston and rushed to another guarded gate. The man stopped him and asked about his business and if he didn't know this city was in a state of emergency. The Arthur informs the man that Commander Varian has sent him and requests that he open the door for him. The man didn't believe him and thought, why would Commander Varian send the likes of this thin boy there? The man asked if he was some runaway noble brat throwing a tantrum, and then he chose the wrong time and wrong place. The Arthur sighed while the man instructed his fellow to take the boy back through the gates as he didn't need any more civilians to take care of him. The soldiers behind the man were shocked as they saw Sylvie, and the Arthur uttered that if they didn't open the door, he would make one way himself. Soon, he left the place while riding on Sylvie, and he remembered when he created the ship's blueprints and got furious. They finally reached the place, and he approached the cliff. He remembered what Varian instructed him, that he shouldn't blame himself. no matter what happens, he should keep moving and not fight to correct the past. Instead, he should fight to correct a better future. On the other side, Virion went down and saw everyone gathered outside Cynthia's room. When he looked inside, he was shocked to see many spikes emerge from her body, and she was dead. Virion went inside and knelt as he didn't think he wouldn't be able to protect the people he loved and started crying loudly. Meanwhile, the Arthur never saw himself as some righteous hero out to save the world. The reason for fighting had always been to protect the few he held dear. But now, after all that happened, he had another reason, to right his wrong, and he saw several ships approaching the ashore.